viewers. This is Brent Smith. I'm the common constitutionalist, and this is my weekend podcast. If you're a regular viewer, listener, or whatever, you know this is the weekend podcast because this is when I do it, on the weekend. So, interestingly enough, last week it was like, well, I think one day of the week it was 70 degrees or something like this, and now we've got a lot of freaking snow on the ground. So it's kind of weird. But at any rate, today we're going to be talking about Florida, gun control, all sorts of fun stuff. So in honor of that, I thought I might set up next to some cannons. Yeah, baby. Because they're kind of in my backyard, for want of a better term. And they're kind of groovy, kind of cool. So, in honor of gun control, in honor of the new Florida gun control law, I'm going to stand next to a freaking cannon. Yeah, baby. Or four. What the heck. And do this podcast. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Be right back.
Listening?
No, you limey. They're not listening. They're watching.
The Common Constitutionalist, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, free from the prying eyes of establishment black helicopters.
Like I was saying, that if you Google Florida passes school safety law, Florida passes gun control law, something like that, what you get is a gazillion leftist websites, and somewhere on page 57 or so you might get a conservative site, Washington Times, you might get something from me or the Daily Caller or one of the big conservative websites, Fox News or whatever. But for the most part, you're going to get NBC, CNBC, MSNBC, you're going to get CNN, you're going to get all these nonsense, the Washington Post, Vox.com, whatever. And they all basically say the same thing, that Republican Governor Rick Scott signed a bill that will arm the teachers and impose restrictions on some gun sales. For the most part, though, they say he's signing a bill that'll arm teachers because they want to scare the crap out of people that all the teachers are now going to carry AK-47s or even worse, AR-15s. They're all going to have them slung over their back, or they're going to have a single point holster, and they're going to walk around like some special operator during class. Chemistry class, excuse me, let me put my AR-15 away so I can pour some liquid in this beaker. I don't know, but it's something ridiculous like that. That's what they want. That's the emotion that they want to invoke by this. And I just printed out the first two I found. CNN, Florida lawmakers passed bill that would allow school staff to carry guns. Oh, the horror. They did not know the horror. I did, of course. And then NBC.com, Florida Governor Rick Scott on Friday signed into state law new gun restrictions and a provision that allows teachers to arm themselves. Egad, how can that be? I don't know. So the new law does allow teachers to arm themselves, school staff. They go through several different types of staff members that can be armed, but for the most part is school the teachers and staff, all right? Although I'd be willing to bet my bottom dollar that this new bill that will arm teachers and staff is going to be optional. There's no way that liberal, leftist, radical school administrators throughout Florida are going to allow their teachers and administrators to be armed, or staff, medical staff, well, whoever the staff is, resource officers, of course, naturally, but all the other staff. These people are going to put up a fuss. They're going to ask for an opt-out. So I'd be willing to bet that somewhere there's some fine print in this law that states that it's an optional program. It's not mandatory. You don't have to do it. You can still stick to your liberal fantasy school gun-free zone if you wish, but it's always an option now. Okay, so I'd be really surprised if there weren't something like that in this law. But there's no other way to harden schools. And that's a kind of a crass term, but it's obviously it works. It describes it properly. And like I said in last weekend's podcast when I was talking about something like this, a hardened school is the only real safe zone. A gun-free zone is not a safe zone. A hardened school is. And if you watched last week, I explained that for example, in the state of Texas, there's I think 1,000 high schools or 1,000 schools in Texas. Of those 1,000 schools, 170 are already allowing teachers and administrators and staff to carry weapons. They've never had a single incident, either mass shooting or accidental shooting, where somebody takes the gun off the teacher and shoots them, or the teacher goes berserk, or some stupid thing like that. Could you get any windier, please? That would be really good if you did. Sheesh. But again, a leftist would come back and say, okay, that's 170 schools. There's thousands and thousands of schools throughout all of the United States. That's just a coincidence. Most schools don't have mass shootings and incidents of accidental firings and whatnot on campuses. That just doesn't prove anything. Well, I suppose that's true to an extent. But think about it this way. All right, so I want to rob a store. I'm a bad guy. I'm a criminal, all right? There are two stores, one on this side of the street, one on this side of the street. They're very similar. They both have, say, 10 employees, all right? One of the stores has basically has a sign that says, "Criminals beware, our employees concealed carry." They concealed carry because now you don't know which employees have weapons and which don't. There's 10 of them in the store at any one given time. You don't know which has a weapon. On the other side of the street, the store says, we are proud to be a gun-free zone. I'm a criminal. I'm a bad guy. I want to go in there and rob the place. I don't want any trouble, but I'm carrying a weapon. Who am I going to rob? Am I going to rob the store that says, "Criminals beware, our employees are concealed carry"? I mean, they conceal carry, or we're proud to say that we're a liberal gun-free zone, a feel-good gun-free zone. Who are you going to rob? That's the whole point of this hardened school thing. Yes, of course, there has to be a better word because of the perception of being hardened. It's a military-type term, but that's what it is. Basically, you want to make your school a hard target. So the guy is going to, and it's usually almost always a guy, except for if it's some sort of jihadi radical. You always want to make your school a hard target. So the guy's going to think twice, or he's not even going to think twice. He's just not going to go there. You know, I mean, that's why gun stores don't get shot up much. They don't get robbed much. I mean, it's just the silliest daggum notion to walk into a gun store and say, "Stick 'em up." Well, you got to be kidding me, dude. What do you got, a death wish? But that's the way it is. So we're going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back.
You're listening to The Common Constitutionalist. Let the truth be known.
Alright, welcome back. Me and my trusty cannon, they were ready for a fight, baby. Yeah. Okay, so before the break, I was talking about hardened targets. I'm talking about hardened schools. And again, we could think of a more PC term to make everybody feel better about it, but that's basically what it is that you want your school to become a hard target. You don't want it to be predator friendly, for want of a better term. Because the bottom line is that these guys, these mass shooters, they're whack jobs. Of course they are. They've got at least several screws loose, but they're not idiots. They want to go shoot up a school. They don't want to get shot before they shoot up the school. That's the point of shooting up the school. As warped as that is, their mission is to go shoot up the school. And they don't intend to die. They intend to shoot up the school like Cruz did, and then throw your weapons down the hall, down the stairwell, blend in and get the crap away. I mean, it didn't work for long. He was caught 45 minutes later, but the bottom line is that he didn't intend for a shootout inside the school. If he thought that was going to happen, he would have thought twice about it, or skipped it and gone somewhere else, or just not done it. Maybe just offed himself. That would have been okay, right? But again, we could still find a more flowery term than hardened school or hard target. Okay, okay. Safe zone. That's what it is. I mean, that's the bottom line. Is that a hard target or a hardened school with members concealed carrying to protect their students is a real safe zone. It's not a gun-free zone. It is a safe zone because everybody's safe there. Okay, so back to the Florida law itself. I was reading something about that Glenn Beck wrote, and he's 100% right. You may not. There are a lot of people that just don't like Glenn Beck because he's all religious and he rubs people the wrong way and whatnot. But he knows the Constitution, he knows history, and he knows this stuff, and he's on the right side. More often than not, he's on the right side of this stuff. So he pointed out that the new bill, here we go, right off of the bat, this red flags for me. The new bill also provides $300 million in funding for mental health programs, school resource officers, yeah, just what we need, more school frickin' resource officers, and school safety upgrades. Terrific. That sounds like the typical bureaucratic black hole, whether it's local, whether it's state, or whether it's federal. It's a typical bureaucratic black hole. That's it. So, and who came up with the number 300 million? What did they did they put a bunch of little slips of paper in somebody's hat in the bureaucratic back room, and they started at 100 million, and maybe they went to 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, and then they just happened to pull out 300 million? I don't know, because I guarantee it was random, completely arbitrary. There's no way that anybody calculated this in this amount of time that came up with, oh yes, it's 300 million. No, it's not. Bull crap. And they were, frankly, if somebody pulled out the 300 million, they were probably disappointed in that, and they were hoping to go for the even 1 billion or something. I don't know. Maybe next time, right? Maybe next crisis, okay? Because that's what it is. They're taking advantage. These politicians and bureaucrats are taking advantage of this particular crisis. Good cannon, good cannon. Sorry, got a little carried away there. Woohoo! But that's what this is. It's a crisis. And so something, again, the liberal mantra, you have to do something. We can't just sit by and do nothing. Well, bullcrap, because this is bad law, and bad law is worse than no law at all. It's that simple. I've been preaching that for I don't know how many years now. And I think most people get it, but liberals don't, leftists don't, politicians don't care, because they'll just pander to whoever they can get the most money out of and the most votes. What do they care? So to say that they're taking advantage of this crisis, it always sounds so cynical, but it's not. Politicians and bureaucrats, they live for these moments. They don't plan on them. They're just happy accidents. Like, who was that? Bob Ross, the painter? He always caused stuff. You never make a mistake. It's always a happy accident. So there's some Bob Ross trivia for you. Yeah, I love that guy. I used to sit around and watch him and just take a nappy time. Listen to this guy drone on about his paintings. Too funny. All right, but I've got off track here. Again, they wait around, and I don't know if they're prepared. That if there's a crisis, then they open up the crisis drawer, and out pops a new bill or a law or spending. I don't know. I'm not sure what the deal is. But it seems like they come up with this stuff awfully fast, coincidentally. So I think what we'll do is take another quick break, and then maybe I'll see what I can do to move this along and wrap it up. Be right back.
You're watching the Common Constitutionalist video podcast.
All right, we're back. Now, getting back to we got to get to the crux of this thing, and this is where this is where I'll finish this thing up. And this is I'm going to be quoting Beck a lot in this because he had it's a very salient point, and it goes back to the Second Amendment. Oh, Second Amendment, I'm sick of hearing about the Constitution. Well, if you're sick of hearing about the Constitution, turn the damn channel to something else. Okay, turn it to some kitty cats playing the freaking guitar or the piano or some stupid thing like that, because this stuff is important. Because if we start losing the Second Amendment, the first is going to follow, and then the third or fourth, fifth, everything's going to follow. Everything pins on the Second Amendment, because the Second Amendment is the teeth behind the First Amendment. That's why it's second. Look it up. George Washington said it. Okay? The Second Amendment is what they put in to protect all the other amendments, particularly the First Amendment, which all you freaking liberals think is so dang gum important. And it is. But it's no more important than the second. Guarantee to you. So anyway, Beck says, first of all, the bill restricts... Now this is what cracks me up, that everybody thinks that this is just okay. Well, it's not even a little bit okay. First of all, the bill restricts firearms purchases for everyone under 21. Whoa, what's the big deal? They're children. They're under 21. Well, bullcrap. Read the damn Constitution. It doesn't say anything about age restrictions in the Constitution. If we want to make it adult and 18, that's okay. All right, that's generally accepted. But when you start ramping it back up again, that basically, the way Beck puts it here, it nullifies the Second Amendment for anyone under the age of 21. It nullifies the Second Amendment. It nullifies a portion of the Constitution for a citizen under the age of 21. Well, that ain't right, and that ain't fair, and that's unconstitutional in its own right. It's ridiculous to even think in terms other than that. Other than that, I ain't got nothing to say about it. I'm perfectly fine with it. Sheesh. He says, let's start with the obvious. I'm sorry, I just stated the obvious. How can anyone approve a bill that nullifies the Second Amendment to anyone aged 18 to 21? Actually, it's anyone under the age of 21. Because, again, the Second Amendment doesn't even put an age restriction on it at all. A 5-year-old could purchase a weapon. I mean, it's not reasonable to think that, but 18 is a reasonable thought, all right? The state of Florida, he says, is now saying to their estimated 1 million or so adults in the age bracket that the Bill of Rights simply doesn't apply to you. And it doesn't, okay? Mr. 19-year-old Marine Corps, he's been in the Marines for 1.5 years, going on 2 or 3 at this point. And he can't buy a weapon until he's 21. He can go over there and kill jihadis and ISIS members and do all sorts of other things. And then when he gets home, sorry son, you can't have a weapon? What, are you freaking kidding me? You're a loon. You guys are unreal. Anyway, I'm sorry I get so animated about this stuff, but it's so obvious. It's so reasonable and logical, and nobody's seeing it. Nobody's talking like this. Nobody's explaining it like this. I don't hear anyone but Beck and me explaining it like this. That basically what they have done is they've nullified the Second Amendment. One of the 10 amendments are nullified for anyone in Florida under the age of 21. That's ridiculous. It's like saying freedom of speech doesn't count until you're 21. Now, who the hell would be for that? But it's the same daggum thing. Oh, speech doesn't kill. Bull crap. Yeah, it does. Look at it. It may not kill in its own right, but it sure leads to it. Look at Stalin. Look at Mao. Look at Kim Jong-un. Makes a speech. Tells his army to go out and do whatever they do. Nazis. The Red Chinese, Mao, whatever. They give a speech, everybody dies. That's it. It's what it is, folks. And again, another thing he points out is also how many mass murderers in the past 5 years, and I've gone a big step further, have been under the age of 21. The answer is 2. The vast majority are in their upper 20s, 30s, and 40s, and a couple of 50s. And he says he doesn't want to give them any fuel to crap all over the Second Amendment for the rest of us. But these guys aren't even targeting the right age. I mean, they're trying to do enhanced background checks. That's not going to work, because if you're not in the system, you can enhance it all you like, and it ain't going to make a hill of beans worth of difference. And there's everything that they're doing isn't going to work. It's not going to make any difference. Okay. So I'm going to skip what he said here, because basically the bottom line is that it's all about the Second Amendment, and it's all about the Bill of Rights that now doesn't apply to you, Mr. 19-year-old Marine Corps, to you, Mr. 18-year-old Navy. It doesn't make any difference who you are. If you carry a weapon for the military, it doesn't matter. Once you go home to Florida, you're just not allowed to have one until you're 21. You're just not grown up enough. I'm sorry. Ridiculous. So I wanted to discuss real quick the Florida Constitution, and I looked this up, and I'm frankly aghast. I'm agog over this thing. Article 1, Section 8 of the Florida Constitution is the right to bear arms. Not the right to keep and bear arms, just the right to bear arms. Section 8, so it's Florida Constitution, Article 1, Section 8. Right to bear arms, A. And I only printed out A because the rest of it's bullcrap anyway. The right of the people, now listen, the right of the people to keep and bear arms in defense of themselves and of the lawful authority of the state shall not be infringed, and there should be a period. But there's not. There's a comma. Except that the manner of bearing arms may be regulated by law. And then there are other clauses that basically kind of, add on to that, but that's basically the bottom line. So, and again, in fact, that's unconstitutional to begin with, because no state constitution can usurp the federal constitution. That's the way it is. The federal constitution is the ultimate law, period. It supersedes every other constitution, state, otherwise. It doesn't make any difference. The federal constitution is the ultimate law. When it was ratified, everybody agreed to that. So, this right to bear arms, except in the manner of bearing arms, may be regulated by law. That's bullcrap, and that's unconstitutional. Evidently, no one's ever challenged it. I don't understand why, but they just haven't. So, and then, in fact, the Supreme Court of Florida has held that now listen to this crap, that the Florida legislature has broad authority to regulate firearms for public health and safety purposes. Bullcrap. No, they don't. The court established, now listen to this crap. This is the Supreme Court of Florida. Of course, these are the people who tried to put Al Gore into office, but hey, what the heck. The court established that, quote, the right to keep and bear arms is not an absolute right, but is one which is subject to the right of the people through their legislature to enact valid police regulations to promote the health, morals, safety, general welfare of the people, unquote. This is what the court concluded. And they further concluded that the legislature may prohibit the possession of weapons which are ordinarily used for criminal and improper purposes. Well, what the frick is that? You can use a hammer for an improper purpose. I could use my machetes for improper purpose. I could use the camera stand for an improper purchase. I could use my fist for an improper purchase. What the crap does it? It just doesn't make, none of this makes any sense. And all of it's unconstitutional. And I don't understand why this stuff has never been challenged at the U.S. Supreme Court. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's completely absurd. I think I'm done. I can't stand this anymore. I had a couple of pages I wanted to cover, but you know what? I'm just finished. This stuff is so inane. It's so ridiculous. It's so childish, and it's the knee-jerk, feel-good bullcrap legislation that's coming out of the states every time there's a crisis. And like I said, I'm telling you what, these bureaucrats somewhere, and it may not be in every state house, maybe they just pass them around, or maybe it's in some central vault in Washington where they have crisis files that, depending on the crisis, if it's mass shooting, they pull open the file and they take it out and they say, okay, we can get this legislation rammed through, let's do it. And then they give it to Media Matters or something, moveon.org. Now, ACLU, you push this through, you make sure the legislature feels bad, and we'll get this sucker through. And the longer we wait, the less effective we're going to be. So let's get the file open, crank it up. It's got to be something like that, because otherwise none of this crap's going to work. And Geraldo Rivera, he was on Fox News, I guess, or something like that, and admitted in front of an entire audience, I think this was at CPAC with Sean Hannity, and Sean said, is any of this stuff going to work? And Geraldo, who's all for gun control, said, no, it's not going to work, but. What do you mean it's not going to work, but? There's no freaking but. It's just not going to work, or it is going to work. If it's not going to work, you don't pass the law. How ridiculous is this? It's just so nonsensical. It's such crap, I can't barely even stand it, and I'm going to freaking pop a vein in my head if I don't quit. So I'm done. This is Brent Smith. I'm the Common Constitutionalist. I didn't mean to get this daggum animated over this thing. I thought I was going to have a reasonable conversation with my camera and my tank. I want to use this cannon now, dagnabbit. All right, I'm done. Y'all have a blessed balance of the weekend, and I'm out. See you next week.